crowd is now moving forward toward the barrier. They're moving forward with their hands in the air, holding flags or both hands in the air. It's a mixture.
On a bridge in Bunkerville, holding high-power scoped rifles, these men took cover, prepared to shoot, prepared to die.
Here to protect our freedom.
New fallout from the showdown in the West. Why Judge Napolitano says this administration's appetite for intimidation against the American people is something like we've never seen.
Government just keep taking more and more federal government. Today, that's for the free men of America.
Developing tonight, Fox News obtaining new video of the mess left behind after the standoff between federal agents and protesters at the Bundy cattle ranch in Nevada. William Lajeunesse is just back from the ranch. William?
Well, the root of the dispute, of course, is the desert tortoise. A federal court gave the BLM authority to seize and impound Bundy's cattle to protect the tortoise. But the order did not say the agency could, as this video shows, destroy his water tanks, water lines, and fences. Bundy also blames the BLM for allegedly killing 2 prize bulls.
If you notice, I'm inside this pen where that bull was shot. And if you look along the inside of this pen, there's nothing where this pen has been bent. If you look on the ground, the post is still in the same spot. It hasn't even moved. It's not like the bull was smashing this pen and trying to attack the people or anything. The pen is sitting here, hasn't moved, no damage whatsoever. Where was the danger in that bull?
BLM wranglers allegedly shot the bulls because they were dangerous and could gore their horses. Bundy's friends say that the white bull was shot 5 times.
Nowhere in the court order that I saw does it say that they can destroy infrastructure, destroy corrals, tanks, desert environment.
Since the Bundy Ranch story broke last week and culminated in a tense standoff with federal agents on Saturday, resulting in the release of the Bundy Ranch cattle, we've been following the money. On the 10th, we reported the militia arrived in the area and cited a former BLM volunteer and a Nevada land broker who revealed to us the true value of the land and the parties who are interested in it. Now, welcome to the program, Rusty.
Hello, Gary. Thanks for having me. Eventually, when I was in my mid-30s, I was just sort of traveling around trying to figure out, where the next land boom would be, and I was hanging out in Florida, hanging around real estate bigwigs, and started learning that the Las Vegas Valley was a really good bet because the casinos were growing in the late 80s and providing a lot of jobs, and there was at least 80,000 acres of really cheap available land in the Las Vegas Valley. So I did research and discovered that most of that land was originally given to Howard Hughes.
Now, you actually worked for the Howard Hughes Corporation, and you assisted them. Could you help us? Tell us about that.
Well, sort of what happened was the Howard Hughes heirs, they had a company called Summa Corporation in the early to mid-90s, and they were having trouble finding certain parcels of the land that they inherited. And because of the knowledge that I gained as a volunteer for the BLM and other research that I did and do at the Clark County Recorder's office, they hired me to help them find certain parcels that they were looking for that they couldn't find. And so that was one of the initial things that got me involved in land use issues and what's going on with land. It started out specifically in the Las Vegas Valley. I helped them identify where 20,000 acres was and was able to get the records from the Clark County Recorder's office and help them organize their situation so that they could sell the land. They weren't able to sell the land because they didn't have the proper records and everything in hand. And I became an expert at being able to figure out, what's what and all that sort of thing.
So when the Bundy Ranch situation flared up, what was your first inclination? What was your instinct to begin research?
Well, I knew right away that the general media was lying. They weren't explaining the right issue. They were talking about turtles at first. Well, I worked as a volunteer in Red Rock, in the Red Rock National Conservation Area for over 10 years on the turtle situation. And there isn't any issue with protecting the desert tortoise out in that area where the Bundy Ranch is. It doesn't have anything to do with that. And the first clue to that came to me in the early 90s after they completed the I-15. They put this huge multi-million-dollar intersection in the middle of nowhere west of Bunkerville. And that was the first clue that there's some kind of big plan going on out there with that real estate out there. You don't put a huge highway interchange in the middle of nowhere.
So basically, by putting the interstate intersection, they're planning to build something. And now with the Bundy Ranch situation flaring up, the BLM comes in. They're trying to force him off of his land. And in the research that you've uncovered, the magnesium dolomite is a rich mineral in the ground, and it has military applications.
Yeah, well, what happened was in the early 90s, the federal government, Congress, ordered that all of the real estate surrounding the Las Vegas area, all of the government land be surveyed. And because of my volunteer work for the BLM for many years, cleaning up trash all over the place, and I'm an avid four-wheel driver and hiker, I've been on every byway, back road, trail that you can imagine within a 50 to 100 mile radius of Las Vegas. And right away, whenever surveyors were coming out from the Geological Survey to do the congressional mandated survey, quite often they requested that I would escort them out there because I know how to get in and out of these areas. A lot of these areas are really dangerous and and you have to have experience to get in and out, and you have to know what you're doing. And I actually escorted surveyors out to this Bundy Ranch area, and that's how I first became familiar with it. And I was really surprised when we were exiting that exit there my first time. I was going, what's this huge interchange doing here in the middle of nowhere? And then we go down and we go up, and they wanted to go up and survey up to the Utah border up in this real rugged mountain area. And I was like, well, what's up with this? And a lot of these surveyors before that, there was a lot of areas that we surveyed where there's a lot of old abandoned mines. And actually, it's a real dangerous situation in southern Nevada. There's a huge amount of old abandoned mines. Almost all of them were magnesium mines. A lot of the bedrock all around this area is magnesium dolomite. And wherever any of this dolomite exists near an ancient undersea volcanic vent, there's real high quality magnesium rocks. The reason why I know this is because when I first started coming across these rocks, they look like meteorites. And I thought it'd be, the first time I found one, I go, this looks like a meteorite. So I rushed back to Las Vegas with it, and the geologist told me, no, it's not a meteorite, this is magnesium. And he explained the whole geological situation about it. And he explained to me that there's like a plant in the Las Vegas Valley that blew up years ago, where they used to pay people to go out and mine this magnesium, and they would sell it like on the open market, and they would get a lot of money for it, and they use it to make rocket fuel.
Duke Energy and China's ENN Group have teamed up to create an eco-partnership with the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, and the Chinese city of Langfang in Hebei Province. Duke Energy and ENN's initial eco-partnership projects will involve testing of solar power generation, substation and community battery storage capabilities, grid management optimization, and other energy efficiency initiatives. With Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in attendance, the signing took place at the U.S. State Department yesterday. Secretary Clinton was very pleased that the eco-partnership was coming to fruition.
All of these collaborations have the potential to help us solve some of our most profound environmental challenges and at the same time create new jobs in both of our countries.
Why has the most powerful man in the United States Senate, however, Majority Leader Harry Reid and his son Rory, who failed in a bid for the Nevada governorship, involved themselves in this effort to crush one individual citizen? There are reports tonight that Chinese energy giant ENN Energy Group is actively targeting the land in question for a solar plant project, with Roy Reid's help. And the principal director of the Bureau of Federal Land Management, the bureaucracy at the center of this conflict, is Harry Reid's former senior policy advisor.
The new BLM director is a former policy advisor to Senator Harry Reid. And Reid endorsed the judge who originally ruled against Bundy for a seat on the U.S. Supreme Court, while Reid's son, Rory, is a lobbyist for a Chinese energy giant, ENN, which proposed building a $5 million solar plant in Clark County.
Let's talk about the Harry Reid connection, because the investigation that you uncovered at the Clark County Assessor's Office revealed that they actually have corporations that are bordering the Bundy property. Could you explain in detail?
Well, the way it works is like the Roy Rogers things that my father used to quote is you got to figure out where the people are going to be and get there first. One of the best examples of that is McDonald's. What McDonald's does, McDonald's is not a hamburger company. They're one of the largest real estate companies in the world. The hamburger situation is just there so that they can cash in on the real estate. So what people do is they try to figure out what's going to happen with the rules and regulations with any particular area, and try to go in early and buy land when it's cheap, and then hold on to it. Because land, you don't have to pay a whole lot of tax on it, and certain things. And then what happens is, as the development starts, then you can make deals and lease deals, and the value of the land goes up. Basically, what happens is every time a piece of land is subdivided, technically all the related land goes up in value, because they don't subdivide any land unless there's some kind of developments in the future expected to happen there.
So do you believe that Harry Reid and the corporations surrounding him have plans on that property itself?
Or do
they have advanced knowledge of developments that'll take place there, hence the highway?
Okay, well, this is what the situation is. The first clue to what's going on is a highway. And so whenever a highway goes in somewhere, there are these real estate people that are called vultures. And what the vultures do is they look for first when the roads are going to get in. And they try to anticipate before the road goes in and start buying up land. Well, adjacent to where the road is, sometimes it can be kind of risky, because sometimes plans change and different things go on. And usually the people that are most successful in being a vulture are ones that are connected to the government that's involved in planning where the road goes. And so what happens is what as a vulture real estate developer, what you're looking for is you're looking for land that you know is that a highway is going to be put in nearby, and you want to have some kind of future knowledge about what sort of development is going to go on, so that you can place your land purchases strategically in a way where there'll be high quality roads, commercial area nearby, access to whatever's going on. And this kind of planning usually starts 20 to 30 years in advance. And I personally believe that there's people that high up in the federal government that take advantage of these situations.
Well, let's talk about some of the irregularities and anomalies that you discovered in the public record. What did you find?
Okay, well, basically, whenever I was researching land, before technology was available, I would go down to the county assessor's office and go through all the recorded land histories of each parcel. Well, now Clark County is real high tech now, and you can do a lot of that research right online. It's really easy. And so they have a system that used to be called the Info Mapper. I think it has a new name now. I forgot exactly what it is, but you can load up. You can go onto that page, and you can click around on the page, and everywhere you click, it pops up the history of the land of that particular parcel. It tells you the size of it, the ownership history, and what's been going on. And so what I did was, when this Bundy thing started, getting into the news a couple of weeks ago is I went on to the Clark County Assessor's website, and I started clicking around, checking out the land history of the lands there. And in the normally strategic areas where someone would want to acquire land and be able to cash in later on down the road in the future by owning this land, I started checking out the history, and there's most of the original landowners in the Bunkerville area are Mormon elders, and I actually worked for a Mormon elder for a few years in Las Vegas, helping him with some of this research because they were worried about some of their people doing crooked land deals. And so I educated him on how to find out what's going on with these lands. And they were actually concerned about the Bunkerville area back in the mid-90s. So anyway, what I did was I started clicking around. I noticed really strange things going on that are not normal in these types of situations related to the BLM. Basically, in general, the original mandate is that the BLM is managing sections, 640-acre parcels. They're sections. And the only time they're managing a land smaller than a section is if they have a section that borders private land. I started noticing during around 1996 and on, they started acquiring intermingling properties, smaller sections, and going in and somehow acquiring what used to be private land, and then the recorded history was disappearing on some of these recorded parcels. And I started blowing the whistle on that around 1996 and 1997, and I couldn't get any clear answers from anybody. Like in the county recorder's office, I was like, and they would say, oh, well, it's the federal government. They do what they're going to do.
Well, let me ask you that. So how did people respond to your whistleblowing on this?
Nobody really cared, and the important people that I associate in the real estate business, they said, well, then let's figure out what's going on and get in there and make some money. So I started clicking around in the area associated with that road that goes into Bunkerville there, just northeast of the Bunkerville property. And I noticed that a lot of the suspicious land activity started in the mid-'80s. And there's some of the parcels that I clicked on had histories that were reminiscent from my past experience of somebody having some kind of land battle. Sometimes what will happen is a bank will, you'll get a loan from a bank, and then you'll go into financial trouble, and the bank will try to take your land. And then usually what happens is somehow a big company ends up with it. It's really strange how, and this is strange. This kind of thing doesn't happen in Kansas, but I started noticing it happens a lot in southern Nevada. And you can't get, and it's really hard to, when I go and try to find the original owners, they won't talk. They're scared, these people. And so what I did is I noticed that some of those parcels there had some strange histories that involved banks like Zion's Bank Corp. And then as I kept clicking, the Reed family name started popping up. And I know from my relationships with some Mormon elders that the Reed family is a very small, tight-knit family, Mormon family, and there aren't that many of them. So if the name Reed pops up in Nevada or Utah, they're related. And so then when I started clicking on the Cedar Development Court, and it looked like that they weren't paying for the land. I mean, there was no assessed value on the land, and it said, the county record says that they didn't pay any money for it. And then I started clicking the adjacent USA properties around it, and during the history, the size of those parcels started shrinking, and they always shrunk in related, similar to the similar time periods that changes happened to the status of some of these other lands, like Cedar Development Corp. In the Reed, in these Reed family trusts and these other LLCs that started buying up these lands, or started ending up with these lands.
Well, Rusty, let me ask about the Reed Bunkerville LLC, the Reed Family Trust. These groups, these corporations, these trusts some of them paid nothing for the land. So how does a corporation suddenly just get something for nothing?
Right. That's what I'm saying. What's going on here? I mean, the adjacent BLM parcels started shrinking, and then their parcels started growing. And there's no record of were they buying it or paying for it or what. And I've also noticed in other areas, not exactly in this area, but the BLM buying deeded land for hugely outrageous prices. Small, like there was a parcel down further down the Virgin River there, adjacent to the state wildlife area. They paid over $700,000 for a 10-acre parcel. Now, why? I mean, that 10-acre parcel, I look closer at it, it has no strategic value whatsoever. So why would they pay $700,000 for a 10-acre parcel in the middle of nowhere? At the most, it's maybe worth $10,000 or $20,000.
The Bureau of Land Management paid $700,000 for a 10-acre parcel of land. Who did they buy it from?
The history is in there. I identified that particular parcel in my video as I was clicking through the area there, and there's that kind of stuff is going on all over Clark County, all over the place, and I would say that there's one of two reasons for that. Somebody politically connected owned that land and cashed in off the taxpayer, or the BLM is trying to acquire that land for some other reason, and they're willing to pay top dollar for that. Those are the only two reasons. That's the only two reasons that I think that they would pay an outrageously high price for a piece of land that doesn't make any real economic sense.
Our first guest tonight says rancher Cliven Bundy's problem isn't that he didn't pay user fees or fines. It has nothing to do with whether his cattle were bothering tortoises. It's simply that he's not a Harry Reid donor. Joining us tonight, Dana Loesch, conservative radio talk show host, anchor of the Dana Show on the Blaze TV network. Dana, good to have you with us. You've been following
Thanks for having me, Lou.
You've been following this story. I mean, these relationships amongst Senator Reid, his son Rory, the federal government, even Governor Sandoval has been to China to glad hand with the ENN Group's executives. What is going on here?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it, Lou? If there wasn't this sort of incestuous relationship between all of these donors and these individuals that had worked with Senator Reid, I think it would be fair to say that there's probably nothing going on here. But unfortunately, there's precedence which states otherwise. We know for a fact that there are a number of projects of Harry Reid donors that have received the golden stamp of approval from the Bureau of Land Management in this same particular area. One of those, and I gave example of that on air, was Harvey Whitmore, and this guy was convicted of illegal campaign contributions by the tens of thousands of dollars to Harry Reid. He had a development that was in this same area. The tortoise, that desert tortoise, was in the way, and very conveniently, Senator Harry Reid, after he reportedly approached the senator, the Bureau of Land Management just very conveniently moved the boundary lines of the tortoise habitat to better accommodate Harvey Whitmore, who again was convicted of illegal campaign contributions to Senator Harry Reid. So there, you have to ask the question. The law is the law, and I think we all agree on that, but it needs to be consistently applied, because what is the law if it is inconsistently applied? And what is the law as well if this is a law that is sort of based upon a bastardization of what constitutional law and what state law is dictating regarding private property? And so these are all questions that are finally coming up, because it's not just Nevada, Lou. There's this situation that's unfolding in New Mexico. We have a situation about private property in Colorado. We're seeing the same thing in Utah. Right. It really is kind of the battle of the West.
Well, new reaction tonight to the Bundy Ranch showdown, as critics suggest the federal response in Nevada was a case of overkill. And they say this is part of a larger pattern.
They can throw an army of men around there, literally, with sniper rifles, on guys just like you are, on people just like you are. Someday, they're going to throw that army of men around you.
Today is the greatest day in my lifetime. I've lived 65 years. Government just keep taking more and more federal government. Today, that's for the free men of America right there, for them soldiers that died and fought for it.
This right here is the best thing I've seen, the people taking their country back.
Judge Andrew Napolitano is Fox News' senior judicial analyst, and with me now, taking the country back. And we've heard so much about how the Bundys did not have the law on their side. They were trying to stand up for a principle. But more and more in the days after this, Judge, people are talking about how it got that far. And if you look deep into this ranching dispute, what the ranchers will tell you is this was the straw that broke the camel's back, that they feel this has been a culture of intimidation. And in fact, there was a piece in the Washington Times just today that used that term, culture of intimidation, seen in this standoff. My question to you is that valid?
Well, the criticism is valid. It is a culture of intimidation. It's the federal government using grossly excessive force.
The land around the Bundy ranches seemed somewhat like a police state to people in this community.
Throwing women to the ground, tasing them, sicking canine dogs on them.
That's caught the attention of private militia across the country who feel First Amendment rights are being violated.
That's what we do. We provide armed response.
Jim Lordy came from Montana to join the protesters, and he says he's not afraid to shoot if necessary.
Why the gun? Well, they have guns. We need guns to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government.
And he says other militia members are joining him.
There's many more coming.
Bundy delivered an ultimatum to Clark County Sheriff Doug Gillespie to arrest federal officers. His demands and ultimatums appear to grow by the day, backed up by some high-powered rifles. On a bridge in Bunkerville, holding high-powered scoped rifles, these men took cover, prepared to shoot, prepared to die.
Here to protect our freedom. Had to happen sometime, might as well happen now, right?
This Saturday, he took position with other gunmen, taking the high ground as federal agents waited in the wash below. Between them, men, women, and their children marched toward a fence.
They're getting ready to launch stuff at us. Get ready.
On the other side of the fence, Bureau of Land Management agents, also armed, also took cover.
My name's Eric. We came down from Idaho.
Are you part of one of the militia groups?
No, just independent.
Just independent down here? From
just a county civil defense unit.
Okay. What does this mean? What does this victory for the Bundys mean, do you think?
I think it means a lot, but it needs to keep happening. We need to keep matching show of force. There's a rancher in Texas right now under threat from the BLM. 90,000 acres on the Red River they're trying to take from him right now. You know, if you're in Texas, go there. Get on a bridge. Show them force.
The Oklahoma militia say they have members in Nevada who say Bundy's cattle were unlawfully rounded up by the BLM.
Evidently, here in America, you don't actually own the property anymore, if you ever did.
The roundup sparked an armed standoff, but it wasn't the Bundy family who owns the cattle. It was militia members from across the nation going up against the BLM. Here in Oklahoma, militia members say they have nearly 50,000 volunteers. Members say they are taking Bundy's side and fear this governmental practice could spread to the Sooner State. Scott Shaw says with all of the recent constitutional infringements by the federal government, the Oklahoma Volunteer Militia is ready to take up arms if needed.
It's up to the feds. The ball's in their court. You know, it depends. You can do this legally, or if you want to try to do a land grab violently, you can do that. We're going to resist you.
Shaw says they haven't had to defend Oklahoma from the feds yet, but says it's beginning to become a concern.
Just look around the country. They're doing it everywhere. If they can do it in Nevada, they can do it in Colorado, they can do it in Texas. I mean, what's to stop them from coming to Oklahoma? The only thing to stop them is we the people.
I would say that just based on my experience with what goes on in Nevada, this particular area here, because of the really hard the access area to the east, I mean, it's almost impossible to get onto this land from the east. And the fact that it's bordered by Lake Mead and the Colorado River to the south and the Overton Arm, and the fact that the BLM has been evicting people out of the area to the west of there for the last 10 years, that the highest value to this land is its remote area that they can carry on secret activities on. They can secure this area very well.
Today's Constitution Day, and a few years ago I wrote an essay about Constitution Day, and I asked a question, you know, is this a day of mourning or a day of celebration for the Constitution's and a relentless assault? And one other writer online actually said the Constitution's dead. It's been shot in the face by a shotgun. It's DRT, dead right there. And he's got a point. This government is wildly outside of the Constitution, and so is every level of government all the way down to your local town council. Mr. DeWeese has already pointed out, and others across the country have pointed out before, they're all outside the bounds. But when asked that question, I say no. The Constitution still lives because it still lives inside of our hearts. And all of those of us who have sworn the oath to support and defend the Constitution, whether in military service like I did, or whether the sheriffs, like the good sheriffs who are here today, or chiefs of police, we all took an oath to support and defend. And as long as we still draw breath, the Republic still lives inside of us. So that's my answer to that. But we do need to understand reality and face the reality that we are in an uphill fight, and it is so wildly outside the bounds that at any time we could have another Lexington Green. It could happen any day. And in the aftermath of Bundy Ranch, I read some analysis by so-called intelligence centers in the counterterrorism intelligence centers in Nevada was one of them, and other places across the country that apparently don't get it. Here's why you had veterans from all over the country jumping in their trucks as individuals, not just Oath Keepers and other groups. We were there too, but there were plenty of guys who all on their own just look and saw what's going on and grabbed their rifle, grabbed their go bag, and jumped in their truck. And why? They told us why when we were there. It was the presence of military snipers, trained Special Forces snipers that they knew were on the other side, pointing their sniper rifles at a ranching family. That was the #1 reason why they rolled out. It was because our government was treating that ranching family with less respect than they would treat someone in Iraq or Afghanistan, where they're still trying to win the hearts and minds. The attitude of the government in this case was, we don't care about winning your hearts and minds, we're going to show you who's boss. Here comes the boot on the back of your neck, and it's wearing a Special Forces foot inside that boot. That's why. And on our side, and here's the message I have for the federal law enforcement that were there, you need to understand how close you were. It was not going to be a Waco where it's going to be you, well-trained professionals, against untrained men, women, children in a church. It was going to be you against other well-trained American fighters. There was one MARSOC Marine who was there who rolled up. No one even knew he was going to show up. He shows up. He just got out of the Marine Corps. 300 kills in Afghanistan behind a .338 Lapua sniper rifle. And he ran into a young Marine who'd driven down by himself from Oregon who happened to have a .338 Lapua. The MARSOC Marine couldn't afford to own a privately owned .338 Lapua sniper rifle. But when the other Marine veteran found out who this guy was, he said, "This is yours. You take it. Give me your M4. They swapped rifles. So now you had a MARSOC Marine who knew what he was doing on the other side of the scope, looking at those Special Forces veteran snipers. It was going to be sheepdog on sheepdog bloodbath that day. And the why? Because those other oath takers had forgotten their oath. And they had agreed to take the money and go serve as the muscle to treat their own people like an occupied enemy nation. And it's a mirror image. You're going to get what you give. We're going to give you back what you give us. If you deploy the military against us, you will see on the other side guys just like you looking right back at you. Hear, hear. And it's the same deal up in New York with the SAFE Act. Same message there to the police of New York. It's like, look guys, it's not the responsibility of the people to bend the knee and submit to an unconstitutional edict from Governor Cuomo and the legislature. You can't tell them, all these oath-sworn veterans, many of whom left brothers on the battlefield, you cannot tell them that in order to avoid violence here at home, you must submit. Bend the knee to the king. Bend the knee and bend your children's knees too. It's not their responsibility to avoid violence, to avoid sheepdog on sheepdog in New York. The responsibility is on the police, the sheriffs, and the deputies of New York to do what's right and refuse to obey those unlawful orders. That is the responsibility. That's the check. That's the safety valve. It's not in submission. It's in devotion and duty of you, the men who are going to be called to act against us, to do what's right and refuse. As long as you refuse, they can't do it without you. You know that. So I had the privilege of riding over here in a car with Sheriff Carpinelli and his wife and kids. Also here is Denny Pyman, an awesome sheriff from Kentucky who came to Bundy Ranch with us. And that's another good point, as Mr. Pratt was saying earlier. You had Brad Rogers there. He came on our behalf. You had Sheriff Pyman from Kentucky. We also had Jeff Christopher from Delaware show up also. So if we're a bunch of radical, anti-government, crazy cop killers, why were there police officers standing right there with us? It's because we're all in this together. It doesn't matter whether you're a cop or you're a soldier or what your status is. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and it's what we will always defend together. If we defend it together, we can avoid bloodshed here at home. But if we allow our police to militarize and turn into an occupying army, or we allow our military to be used here at home domestically against the people, there will be another fight. And there should be. The founders would roll over in their graves to look at us and think, you're going to submit without a fight? Of course there'll be a fight, just as there was a fight in their day. Just as there was a fight on Iwo Jima and Normandy. We will fight if we have to. But if you do what's right, if you understand your oath, and if you simply respect and obey the Constitution, we don't have to go there. But don't fool yourselves. Don't listen to Southern Poverty Law Center and other nonsense that, oh, we can't tell why they went down there. There's all kinds of crazy crackpot theories. No. It was snipers. It was militarized contractors looking like they just came out of Afghanistan or Iraq. And it was the violation, plain violation of the First Amendment, the big reason why guys showed up. Those ridiculous First Amendment areas where they're told you can have free speech inside this box. Of course, everyone ignored them. All the cowboys there, to their credit, ignored that nonsense. They said, we're not going to comply with that. But that ticked off a lot of veterans. Because they said, what am I fighting for? What did I go and fight for? And one more message for the feds out there. I want you to take a good, hard look at who showed up. I want you to think about, number one, how many Marines showed up. And I was Army Airborne, and I'm very proud of that, but I'll tell you what, you got to give credit where credit's due. The Marines showed up en masse. There were more than any other veteran group out there. It was Marine Corps at Bundy Ranch. And don't think, you feds out there, don't think that the guys who just got out are much different than the guys who are still in. They're of the same mindset. And this is the politicians and your would-be dictators in Washington, D.C., this is what they're worried about, and they should be worried about it. They have to worry that if they go too hard, they drop the hammer too blatantly on Americans like at Bundy Ranch, that the Marine Corps will flip on them, and I think it would. And same goes for the close to the tip of the spear in the Army, Army Airborne, your Special Forces, your Navy SEALs, all those groups out there. The more hardcore they are as warriors, the more likely they are to look at something like that and say, that's it, I'm done, and join the resistance. And so that's why they are careful about what they do. It's not out of charity or concern for your lives that they don't drop the hammer. As we found out later on, they were actually considering a military strike at Bundy Ranch. Can you believe that? Washington Times reported it. They were considering using military force at Bundy Ranch. Thankfully, they did not. Because if they had, that would have kicked off a civil war in this country. It would have. We don't want that. But the way to avoid it, once again, is for those who are in the positions of enforcement, whether federal, state, whether they are in the military, they must refuse to be the muscle for idiots like Cuomo or Obama or Holder who don't understand warfare. Do not open the door on U.S. soil to sheepdog on sheepdog violence. Don't do it. Thank you.